Just how significant do you think today's news is?
I think we have to be very clear to distinguish rhetoric from action. And I think anybody who is monitoring the risks of a possible use of nuclear weapons will know what kind of steps precede that in order to be taken seriously. And we have seen in this war a repeated saber rattling of a nuclear threat from Putin's Russia on day two has put nuclear strategic forces on alert to send exactly the signal that Western assistance, military assistance to Ukraine is unacceptable. So we are in this familiar pattern. And those officials who are in the Pentagon or in the Department of Defense are looking at this will know how serious is the risk. And we also should be aware that Russia's repeated attempts to even do nuclear tests have been failing, including with the most recent missile launcher that has exploded in plain air.
Yes, you mentioned, I mean, President Putin has changed the rules. We'll talk in a minute about the doctrine that's changed today, but changed the rules about nuclear weapons. You've explained that this change now says an attack from a non-nuclear state, if backed by a nuclear power, will be treated as a joint assault. Uh, just go a little bit further, if you will, to what you were just saying. Is this posturing and fear tactics, and how much does that come into play?
I think most of this is posturing and intimidation, and we have seen the draft amendment of the Russian nuclear doctrine that were presented at the Russian National Security Council right on the day of meeting between President Zelensky and President Biden, when exactly the question of longer range missiles were discussed. So again, in this kind of pattern of nuclear blackmail, I would call it, because clearly Russia's own national security is not threatened. Nobody declared a war on Russia. Russia itself has in an unprovoked manner invaded a neighbor, and I think that right now failing actually to win militarily in a conventional war on the battlefield and losing so many soldiers with so little territorial gains, it has been a consistent strategy of Kremlin's leadership to threaten nuclear escalation to achieve only one thing, in to ensure that Western allies abandon Ukraine. And I think this is also a very, significant message to President-elect Trump, who, as we know yesterday, accused President Biden of escalation by providing such capabilities to Ukraine. So I'm sure Putin is also playing a US domestic scene with that. Let's remember that it's an operative of KGB in the Kremlin who knows how to intimidate and manipulate people.
So we've also heard from Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov today. So this is a signal that the US want escalation, and without the Americans, it's impossible to use these high-tech missiles. So, there's a message from him as well today.
American intelligence has been repeatedly providing data to Ukrainians since the beginning of this war. There is nothing new about US helping with some of the satellite connections for Ukrainian armed forces to actually target what is a legitimate target according to the international law, military infrastructure that is used to attack Ukraine. So Russians are trying to present this specific attack is something new, whereas we do know that Russian territory has been repeatedly attacked by Ukrainian long-range drones, and these ATACMS are operated by Ukrainian armed forces, mainly with some assistance from Americans, but they are being operated by Ukrainian army.
How many of these ATACMS would you think Ukraine has?
I don't know that information, but it's in hundreds.
Is it? Yeah. Perhaps significantly, we've spoken today, we've read today that it's reported Ukraine had only been granted permission by the states to use the missiles in the Kursk region, where Kyiv's forces are in control of territory. But the military facility hit, it's reported, is more than 100 miles away from that. How do these use of long-range missiles change the situation on the ground with that in mind?
Well, we do know that President Zelensky provided President Biden with a list of high-value targets. And I am sure that these targets are not only in Kursk Oblast, because what is at stake is, again, military capabilities that are used against Ukrainian cities, that are used against Ukrainian soldiers on Ukraine's sovereign territory. So what we hear publicly from the White House, and they have been quite mute on this, right? You notice very little statements from the White House, may be different from what has been agreed. And we also get reporting that this specific facility was hosting North Korean military capabilities. And if that has been confirmed by both Ukrainian and American intelligence, that geographical restriction may have been altered.